And I'm glad that we've waited a few extra weeks to have this podcast, because the next thing that came along, of course, is that we had the election of Pope Leo XIV as the Bishop of Rome for the Roman Catholic Church. And, that event was momentous, obviously, for Roman Catholics, but is also momentous for the world because the church has a big impact on the world. And among other things, many of the early comments made by the Pope have dealt with peace in the world. And I know there are some comments you want to make about that. So let me just pose this interesting comparison that you brought up the other day. Is it possible that President Trump and Pope Leo XIV could in some form or fashion have an effect on the world of a magnitude demonstrated by President Reagan and Pope John Paul II? They brought down the wall in Berlin. They obliterated communism in Europe and reduced the Soviet Empire to a broken country that we now know simply as Russia. And so I know you have a lot to say here. So 1, 2, 3, go.
Well, I keep watching because every time I think we've come to the conclusion of what we can say in this podcast, like every day it's like something new. So it all started with my theory here, started with that meme that President Trump put out of himself with the vestments of the Pope. And I think for as funny and as, it blew up all over the internet and it blew up everywhere, it also signaled to me, I wouldn't call it soft diplomacy, but a reaching out to the conclave, to the popes, and now especially to the Pope that was chosen. I mean, think about the odds. Everybody, now that people say the fix was in, that he was already going to be chosen as the Pope. And for those of you who aren't Catholic or don't follow it, it's called the Pope is the head of the whole entire Roman Catholic Church. It's called Roman Catholic, as in Rome. And he's the Bishop of Rome, but he's also over the entire global Catholic Church. Because Rome, why? Because that is where, at the Vatican, in Rome, if you remember the letters of Paul, he goes to Rome. He's on his way to Rome to preach the gospel and establish the church there, and there he is martyred. St. Peter, same thing, went to Rome to establish the church, and there he was martyred as well. So that is the place of the greatest apostles, Paul and Peter, who are there. And that is why that's where the Vatican is. That's where it's headed up there. Anyhow, my little diatribe. But all I have to say is, even before we knew it was going to be an American Pope, nobody ever in public stated that it could be an American Pope that got chosen, because there had never been an American Pope, because America had so much wealth and prosperity that it would be sidelined for another continent or another country or something else, and it could never be an American Pope. And here comes Donald Trump, aka Dennis the Menace, remember from the first podcast.
Yeah.
But now he's wearing like he's got a spiritual mantle on him now that he's had this conversion or something happen to him with God, right? So now he's all on fire about the Catholic Church, of which he is not a Roman Catholic, and I contend yet. But anyhow, all right, so he puts out the meme. He's in the Vatican, he's in the Pope vestments, and it just blew up everywhere on the internet, and everybody just went gaga over it, and people were loving it and hating it all at the same time. And then all of a sudden we have the election of the new Pope. And what happened? It's the first American Pope in the history of the whole church of 2,000 years. 2,000 years, not like our country 250 years. 2,000 years, they've never had an American Pope. And now we have an American Pope. Coincidence? God's hand on it? I'll leave that to you all to decide. But knowing Donald J. Trump, if you follow him in the least, which I don't think anybody listening to this podcast doesn't follow doesn't at least love him or hate him, there is one thing about him that is a take it to the bank thing about him. He is extremely competitive. And from the beginning, he loves to be the top, the best, the world's best, the biggest. He has to top what he's very competitive. So if Ronald Reagan is attributed with the fall of communism, married to his relationship with John Paul II, who came out of communist Poland to bring it down, and that's been sort of the high mark, right? Or the whatever you call the highest thing.
High water mark, yeah.
If that's what he is, there is nothing in Donald Trump's blood, in his makeup, born again or not, which would not make him super competitive to have to top it.
But here's the thing. Is Pope Leo ready? Because he'll have to do his part in that.
So as they said, with every time they tell Donald Trump, it cannot be done. It's never been done. Don't do that. Every time somebody tells him you can't or it will never happen, we just passed the big, beautiful bill. We just got him elected and all his cases got dropped. We just are finding out about the auto pen. So never say never. And if you add that God's hand is in on this, we have a war in Ukraine. We have this horror show in Gaza and Israel. We now have a terrorist, I believe, thing that happened with that little Israeli couple that got shot. Here in the United States, we have the China looming. We had 3 wars. So Ukraine, Israel, and then we have Iran. So if you put these 2 guys together, because one thing about Pope Leo, like him or not, believe in him or not, God's hand has got to be involved in this. He is definitely all in for peace. So if you have a president who wants to be the president of peace, and you have a pope who wants to be the pope of peace, is my understanding that at that high level, people can put aside whatever things they might feel about each other personally and put it aside to do something grand for the Lord.
Amen.
So Dennis the Menace is now at a high stakes game of making peace for Mr. Wilson.
That is a wonderful soliloquy on Pope Leo and Donald Trump.